Hello and welcome to my basement. We're not in the workshop. The workshop is just a skip and a hop from where we are now, but I figured we'd do much more of a casual video. Here, I have the Mando Paul, as I've been calling it. If you follow me on any of my social medias, you will have seen reams of pictures of this because I have been just ecstatic with how this project has been going. I'm sure, like many of you, I was looking for ways to bide my time well on quarantine and out of work. So I do what I do best, and I have been building things. This has been my main focus, among other things, but I really wanted to crunch this out. Now, I'm a guitar player by trade, but I do play a handful of other instruments, mandolin included, which was one of the first ones I picked up. I was drawn to the mandolin because I really wanted to play violin when I was younger, and a mandolin is tuned exactly the same scale. The only difference is it has frets. So being a guitar player, it sounded like the easiest transition to try and play violin. Now, I still don't play violin, but I do love the mandolin. And my issue is that the only nice mandolin that I have ever owned, I ended up selling years ago. And much like any instrument players can sympathize, I regret getting rid of it. And I'm sure that's the case with many instruments. I know it's not the only one that I regret getting rid of. But in all the years that I've been building, I have not built a mandolin for myself. Now, fun fact, when I started building on a full-scale basis, I started in a 2-bedroom apartment on my kitchen table, which didn't yield me enough room to build a guitar. Though I had built a couple at that time, my main focus was mandolins. Because I could build the stringed instrument, it's the same concept as building a guitar, but on a smaller scale, which my kitchen table allowed me at the time. But today, we're going to take an in-depth look at this. I'm going to be clipping in and out of some sound bites of songs that I know on this thing. Like I said, I'm not the most well-versed in it, but I do know how to play it. I do know positions and some chords. So this will be an in-depth look. If you want just some sound bites and a shorter video of it just to hear how it sounds, I will be posting one of those too. This is just more of an in-depth look for you gearheads who like to know the ins and outs of what's going on. So what is going on? What do I got here? It looks like a traditional mandolin by all aesthetic purposes, but it's not. I made some key differences for things that I would look for in a mandolin, particularly because of my playing style, because of being a guitarist by trade, and mainly because I got fat fingers. It's hard to wrap around the tiny neck of a mandolin when you've got big fingers, and it yields some struggle when you're playing. So first and foremost, what we got going on here, we've got a mango top, which I've done a honey burst dye finish on. The sound holes are inlaid with purple heart. I've also got purple heart, mahogany, and maple inlaid on the back side of here, though it's mostly covered up by the tailpiece. The back and sides are teak, so they match. The neck is sapele with a purple heart tail cap. And the fretboard is granadillo, specifically the sapwood. It's got that blonde streak up at the top there. The inlays were done in Pau abalone, along with my headstock logo, which the camera does not want to focus on. Hardware-wise, we've got nothing special going on here. These are China-made tuning keys. They're actually pretty well made, even though they're cheap and from China. Fun fact, when you order these from China, they sell them in a pair, but they are the same side. So you actually have to take these apart and flip them in order to get the mirrored look. We've got a violin-style volute carved in the back to add some support to the headstock. The nut and saddle are both bone, and I custom made those myself, and I'll get into that, why I had to do that in a little bit here. The bridge is part of the sapele that I cut to look like a Les Paul tailpiece. And then the mandolin tailpiece, it was just an antique tailpiece that I had sitting around. I liked the look of it. After I cleaned it up, it actually took some of the plating off, and I'm finding out that it's actually bronze. So it's nothing special, it just looks nice. And it is a really nice tailpiece, even though it was old and rusty, and now it's cleaned up. So, aside from the fact that it looks like a Les Paul, what's different about this? There's a few big differences about it. One of the things that I didn't like about standard mandolins, even though I liked playing them, was that the frets are so close together. So a standard mandolin is 14 inches. And I've got one here for scale. So there's a standard mandolin. This is just a cheap one that I've been playing on. It doesn't hold tune very well, but it does the trick. This one is 16 inches, which allows the frets to space out further, which allows me more space for my fat fingers. And you'll be noticing a trend with the whole fat finger thing. What's the other big difference with it? The width of the fretboard. It's vastly different. That is part and partial to the fact that the strings on a standard mandolin are really close together, and again, being fat fingered, you end up pressing down on the frets, and I tend to slip and hit the strings, so I wanted something wider. Now going back on it, I would have scaled back just a little bit, but I was kind of emulating most of the measurements from a Les Paul on a scaled down level, so I went with those measurements and scaled them down significantly to get to this shape. I mean, all the measurements on this body are also the same measurements off of a regular Les Paul, just shrunk down. It's about quarter size of the measurements, maybe a little less than that. So that body shape, I did lots of calculations to get that body shape. Now the fretboard being wider is why the bone nuts had to be custom made, because a standard mandolin nut is much smaller, so I had to custom make these ones and custom cut them to the appropriate size to get that actual taper down the fretboard. The other big noticeable difference is the sound hole. I wanted that Les Paul look, which is why I went with a honeyburst, and which is why these sound holes are actually on the top. I have seen a design similar like this on an acoustic guitar, and I really liked it, so I adapted it and used it on this. I went with 4 in the front, and then in between each one of those, there's 3 on the back. Now I'm calling these finger sound holes. They carry sound very well. It has a nice full body sound that I'm quite fond of. But the one downside is it doesn't carry out, which, because I'm not performing, it's not a big deal to me. I like it because it actually carries the sound upwards and towards me, so I can hear it better, which for my purposes is perfect. I love it. It sounds great. But if you were to use this in a live setting, the sound wouldn't carry this way, so it would dampen the further this direction you get. So if I were to redo this and do the same design for a customer, I would do it in a different way so that the sound could carry somehow out the other direction. Maybe add a F hole of some kind here. But I really didn't want to take away from the look of the Les Paul style. And so because of that, I left most of the face clean. And I think these are small enough, having multiples of them, that looking in a certain direction, you don't notice them as much. So it doesn't take away from that whole aesthetic that I was going for. Now, what's on this idea? To be honest, I was standing in my living room staring at my Epiphone Les Paul and just thought how cool that design would be as a mandolin. So I went ahead and just went with that, and it kind of evolved as it went along. It's an arc top. It's got a severe arc back, so it's quite a dip, which helps carry the sound. And then it's just a slight arc on the top. Other than that, that's the Mando Paul. I'm really happy with it. I plan to do more. I had to make custom molds to make this, so because I had to take the time to do that, it seems kind of pointless just to make one. I really like the sound combination between the mango and the teak, so I will definitely be using that pairing more. I do have more teak. I don't have more mango right now on hand, but I will definitely be looking into getting some more, because the sound acoustically is, I really like the pairing. And if you'd like to follow more builds, I do post a lot on my social medias. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I'll leave the links down below. Other than that, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.